Hey, what is going on, guys? This is Jason with Jadren Aquatics. Thanks for joining me again. So today we are going to start part 2 of the DIY fish room. This time we are going to discuss drilling your tanks and how to set up an automatic drip system. If you didn't see the first video, I'll link that up above. You don't want to miss that one. That one we broke down some of the cost involved, but the most interesting thing that we talk about is how much money do you spend on water and how much money do you actually spend on electricity when running a fish room. And again, this doesn't have to be a monstrous fish room like mine. This can be as few as 3, 4, 5 tanks all the way up to a couple of hundred tanks. Try to make it so that you can do this on any type of budget and any type or size of fish room. So let's go ahead and let's get started, and let's start off first of all on the first process that you need to go through when setting up an automatic drip system or an automatic water change system, and that is drilling a tank and using a bulkhead. So let's get started. All right, let's quickly go over first thing you need to do, and that's to drill your tank. Don't be scared to drill your tanks. I'll put a link above. I've got a video on showing you how to drill your tanks. It's really easy. There's nothing to really worry about. It takes a little while to kind of get the idea of the amount of pressure that it takes, but it's not that difficult once you get the hang of it. Well, there is one thing to kind of fear. And that's when you're dealing with larger size tanks. I've got a couple of 55-gallon tanks that, I'm not gonna lie, I'm terrified to drill them because I can't know for sure whether or not the back part of the glass is actually tempered glass. Because if you try to drill tempered glass, it'll explode on you. If you want to do a video search for that, you can see people when that happens to. And I'm the type of person, like, taking a balloon and blowing it up like makes me nervous. And the people that can take them and blow them up and let them pop in their face, like, no, that's not me. So the idea of drilling a tank and it exploding on me, like, I think I would have to sell everything in my fish room if that happened. So that is one of the things that's more unnerving. When you're doing a 10 or a 20 or a 40, none of those ever have tempered glass, so you don't have to worry about it. The problem with the 55s are some of them are and some of them are not. And there's some way to use polarized glasses to do it, and man, I've never been able to get it to work, so I don't know. I even called and asked them to explain which ones were and which ones were not from Aqueon, and they can't tell you because it depends on the price of glass. So, all right, so the next thing let's talk about is the bits that you want to use. This is a glass bit. I'll try to link almost everything in this video down below so you guys can see the exact ones that I'm using. You can buy these multiple different ways. You can buy some cheap ones in sets. They're like some Chinese made ones for maybe $15 or $16, and those are really good, but they're really only going to stay sharp for probably 4 or 5 tanks, and then it's just going to take longer and longer. Since I drill so many tanks, I've got some nicer ones. I spent about $25 on one size instead of like the whole set, but they'll stay sharper longer, and it's easier to drill them. Because I've had ones that have gotten dull and not really realizing it, and instead of taking 1 or 2 minutes to drill through, it ends up taking like 6 or 7 minutes to drill through. And so, again, link all those below. Okay, so that is the bit that you want to use. Okay, so the next thing we want to talk about is the actual bulkhead that you want to use. The type of bulkheads that I use, we've got here. These are 1/2-inch bulkheads. The type that I use they're threaded on the inside and on the on both sides. You can buy them slip. The problem with buying them slip is if you're using slip, in most cases you're going to have to use glue to hold them together, and therefore it makes it permanent, and it makes it a whole lot harder to take them down and move them and do anything you might want to when you can use these, and it's just so much easier. You can use the slip on this one because this is the actual one that goes in the tank, because that one you can take on and off and it's not that big of a deal, and if it leaks a little bit it doesn't really matter because that's water going through here. But this is the back side where it comes out. This is the one you don't want leaking. And so the way that I use these things, again, I use 1/2-inch, and there's 2 other things that I use with them. The first one we have is this one. This is a 1/2-inch 90-degree elbow. It's got a 1/2-inch hose barb on it, and it's 1/2-inch thread, and that's the one I put here on the back. It's a good idea to use pipe tape on the back of these. I don't have it on there right now, but just so you know it, to keep it from leaking. All right, so the other piece that you want to have, this is going to be the piece that actually sits in the tank. In just a second, I'll show you what it actually looks like when it's in the tank. So again, this one's threaded. Again, it's a 1/2 inch. These are threaded in the top. These guys, these are usually in the irrigation type section. And so this is where all the water is going to go into. So usually when you're filling up with water or dripping it, barely any water is getting over the top. So the chance of fish going over is about impossible, but with all my tanks, it has happened before, so it can happen. So sometimes I use little pieces of sponge pieces that I'll put in there, but sometimes those get clogged with duckweed. And so you can put maybe some fish netting over there or whatever you want to do. There's different ways you can try it. And so this would screw on like this. So this is the way that it would sit inside the tank. And so as the water gets up to this top, it's going to just simply overflow into it and then flow out this side. And then this is going to go into your drain. I'll show you what that actually looks like right here. Okay, so you can see right here we've got the bulkhead that's coming out, and yes, I typically use a little bit of silicone on mine just so I know that it seals good, but a lot of times you really don't need to use that silicone, but it just makes me feel better and it's easy to take on and off. Okay, so then we have this 1/4 inch with the hose bar, or 1/2 inch with the hose barb that comes off, and then I have a 1/2 inch piece of hose. And the way that my drain system works is all of these guys are hooked together with this 1/2 inch piece of PVC that goes down, and it's at a little bit of an angle, and so that it comes down and it meets here, and then it goes down, and then it comes down into my main drain. And you can see a bunch of other holes in here because of all the different ways that I used to do this. This has definitely been a learning experience, but this seems to be the best way by far. So this finally goes into this main drain here, and this drain continues on. And again, everything's worked on gravity, so it's at an angle. And so it goes here, and then it actually goes off into the sump. So it just simply overflows into the sump. And since I don't have a drain, because you could just have this going into a drain, I actually have a sump pump that's set up, and this sump pump pushes the water outside. I have a little kind of sprinkler system set up, so when it pushes out, it actually sprinkles the backyard. But I also, back in the back, I've drilled a hole in there. As you can see, this pipe that's going out the back, that's actually for overflow. If this thing gets full or gets clogged, it'll still run out that, and it'll run out the front, and it runs out into the front yard. So that's the way that my system works. But if you had a drain, this would simply just go into the drain, and you wouldn't have to have all this other stuff. But since I'm in Texas and I'm in a garage and I don't have a basement, I don't have any type of drain. This is the best that I can use. But I've been using this now for 3 years, and I've never had any problem with it whatsoever. It's simply got a float mechanism on it. When that float gets too high, it turns it on and shoots the water out. So again, that part is all automatic. Okay, so here we see inside the tank, you guys can see that's the 1/2 inch elbow that's in there, and as you can see, the water level just sits right on the edge of that, and as the water drips in, it overflows into that, and again out the drain system that I showed you. Okay, so the next thing that you're going to need is to set up your automatic drip system. And so one of the things that you're going to use in that is this type of piping. This is just the 1/4 inch. This is the same kind like they use. This is the same kind like they use on your refrigerator for an ice maker. Again, I'll link this stuff down below. It's like a semi-rigid type tubing. This is what is going to have the water that actually drips into your system. And so we have different types of connectors that we use. This is a T, and so these are really easy. So you just simply press them in here until you feel that it's locked in, and then you can't pull it apart. It's actually, you have to push down on this little piece that goes around like this, and then it just simply pops out. So it's real easy to disassemble them or clean them or whatever it is you want to do. I would suggest that you try to find the dark colors of these. When you get these clear ones like this, it builds up algae on the inside. So if you get black ones, the only problem is you can't see the water passing through it, where the clear ones you can actually see if there's actually water going through it until there gets so much algae in it. And this is that's an elbow, so when you're getting all that stuff set up, again, I'll show you it over the tanks in just a second so you can see what it looks like. And so when you pump the water to these things, you want to be able to try to control the amount of water that you're dripping to each tank. And so one of the things that I like to use, they're called button drippers. This is what one of them looks like right here. Again, these simply just have a hose barb on them, and they just snap into this plastic. And when you put these things in there, they're almost impossible to pull back out. You almost have to cut them to get these things out. And you can buy these things in different gallons per hour that they drip. They make them in actually different colors. The bottom of them actually have like a different color. Some are green, some are red, some are black, and it has to do with how many gallons they drip per hour. So for instance, what I like to do is I like to get like the 1 gallon per hour and put it in a 10 gallon, and then I'll use a 2 gallon per hour on a 20, and then I'll use two 2 gallon per hours on a 40 gallon tank. And that way it seems to be kind of getting the same amount of drip or the same amount of water change that's happening throughout. But something that I've actually started switching to on some of the tanks, because some of the tanks I like them to do a lot bigger water change, especially the tanks that I have where I'm growing out baby fry. You know, fresh good water is really good for them, so you want to do more of a water change on those. And so the ones that I actually use on those, so that is these are the adjustable drippers. They're just like the button ones where they just simply snap in, but this top that's on it right here, you can actually spin it, and when you're spinning it, you're controlling the amount of water that's coming out. Now, you don't really know how many gallons per hour is actually coming out unless you want to try to run some kind of test. But it gives you the ability to really turn this thing up to let a lot of water out. The only thing that you need to keep in mind is whatever pump that you have, as we'll talk about in a minute, that's pumping these things, it can only produce so much amount of pressure. And so if you've got more pressure needed than the thing gets supplied, you're not going to get the right amount through here. And then some of the ones maybe that are farthest from the pump may not get any water whatsoever. So if you turn these up too high and let a lot of water out, it may cause the other ones to struggle. Because those guys are just dripping, and instead these are just pouring out. And the way that I notice on my tanks, if that's happening anywhere or there's a problem, I can see that the water line starts to go down. When you're doing automatic water changes, your water level should pretty much stay at the same level on every single tank that you have. So if you see your water level starting to drop, you know you've got some sort of problem. So it's a real easy indicator to know that you've got something going wrong. So let's go ahead and let me show you what all these setups look like actually on the tank. And then right here you'll see the hosing and stuff that I've used, that I showed you before, that has the T here, that has this the dripper on it. And now typically I don't like for these things to actually set in the water, because you can get backflow problems, especially if it's on a higher tank, because whenever this thing stops, the water starts going back into the hose, which actually causes that pulling force that will start sucking water, that can cause a full backflow and empty a tank up to the point of the bottom of that thing. So some of the times I'll have these in here and I'll have them setting more kind of up in the air like that, depending on what the setup is. But you can see on these I do create a notch here. So if I put this in here, I can actually, you know, have that sitting just like that. That way I know that thing doesn't fall out and it doesn't go crazy and start spewing water all over the place. So for instance, if you see this one here, this is on one of my 40 gallons. This is the one that has the one where you can change it to let out different amounts of water. And as you can see, I've just got it sticking up in the air. So again, it doesn't cause any backflow. And then if you actually go up here, you can see where all of mine actually connect together at. So I have about 70 or so tanks that these all go out to. So it looks kind of like a crazy contraption with hoses and stuff going everywhere. But that's the way that I have this all set up to actually pipe. And as you can probably see on some of the clear ones, you can see how it's starting to build up algae on it. And this one you can see this a little better in action. This is the one that's set up on my grow out tank for my fries. You can see my angelfish fry in here. These have the adjustable drippers on it, so I can turn it up. These I like to keep really high so that, you know, lots of water is turning over in this tank. Okay, so the other thing that you've got to keep in mind is you've got to have some type of water source that you're pulling your water in. A lot of people will actually have setups where they've got a RODI system on the wall, and it's automatic having water being pushed through it, and it's clean, and it goes directly into the drip system. I don't have water out here in mine, so what I have to do is I have a 275-gallon tote you see here. I have to fill this thing up about every 3 days, put safe in it to get the water good, and this is my water source that I use to push out to all of my drippers for the automatic water changes. Okay, so let's talk about the pump that we can use to actually power this system. Now you can use all sorts of different pumps to make this thing work, but what I have found that works the absolute best is these diaphragm pumps. This one is actually set up for just for my angelfish grow out or my fry grow out tank. So that's all this one's powering. I have a much bigger one, but it still looks the same. Again, I'll link that down below so you guys can see the one that I'm actually using. And what I really like about these pumps is it doesn't matter if they run dry. It doesn't hurt them whatsoever because of the way that they actually do the pumping action. And as you can see, this one is running right now, and it's just absolutely completely silent. I did buy one time that I had on the wall that literally sounds like a jet engine taking off whenever it's going, and it would vibrate so loud. It was just, you would walk into the room in the house that it was on the wall, and it was just, it was terrifying. So that one actually ended up breaking. It was some cheap Chinese one that I wish I'd never bought, but Amazon was really good about giving me at least most of my money back. So that's the way that this thing works. As again, you can see it's got an inlet and an outlet, and so on mine, this hose would actually go into that tote and pull water directly out of that tote, and then this one is the out one. That one would go out into that, you know, that big manifold of ones you saw up there that had all those T's on it to go out. All right, there you go, guys. There is part 2 to the do-it-yourself fish room, showing you guys how I do my automatic drip system. If you guys have any questions or comment, be sure and leave it down below. So thanks again, guys, and God bless.